Please consider supporting Black Women United YEG for the protection and advancement of black women and girls in Alberta. You can learn more about them at bwunited.ca. They are always looking for donations and volunteers. So please, again, support Black Women United YEG for the protection and advancement of black women and girls in Alberta. Again, that website is bwunited.ca.
This is Dmitry Samarov from Chicago, Illinois, and I love listening to Vish Khanna's Creative Control because whether he's talking to a favorite musician or actor of mine or someone I've never heard of, it's as if he's introducing me to a new friend. And the way things are going, couldn't you use a new friend? Listen now.
To make your flexible monthly donation to Creative Control, please visit patreon.com/creativecontrol today.
Meg Baird is a talented multi-instrumentalist, songwriter, and singer based in the state of California. Originally from New Jersey, Baird co-founded the Philadelphia band Espers, was the drummer in Watery Love, and also had a key role in Hair on Oblivion, in which he played drums, wrote poetry, and sang. Beyond collaborating with the likes of Mary Lattimore, Steve Gunn, Sharon Van Etten, and Will Oldham, among many others, Baird has also tended to an expression of her own, releasing 4 solo albums since 2007. The latest is a beautiful and beguiling one called Furling, which arrives on January 27th, 2023, via Drag City Records. Meg and I connected recently to have a discussion about the road from New Jersey to Philadelphia, the enduring significance of radio, her interest in classical music as a child, and the piano and cello lessons she stopped taking so she could play sports, her father's classical guitar, and her sister, Laura Baird, who is also a musician, loving Neil Young and getting into the drums, closely collaborating with her partner, Charlie Softly, the sound and substance of Furling, a pandemic tour, upcoming shows, other future plans, and much more. A part of the Entertainment One Network with the support of listeners like you who follow and subscribe to this podcast and spread the word about it, and make flexible monthly donations at patreon.com/Creative Control, which is the primary source of revenue for all the work that goes into this show every week. Thanks again for supporting the show at Patreon. Plus, in-kind support from Pizza Trocadero, The Bookshelf, and Planet Bean Coffee in Guelph, Ontario, and Granddad's Donuts in Hamilton, Ontario. This is episode 748 of Creative Control, featuring the talented and kind Meg Baird, with your host, me, Vish Khanna. Hi, Meg. How you doing?
I'm well, thank you. How are you doing?
I'm well. Thank you for asking. Where in the world are you today?
I am in Eureka, California, up on the North Coast.
Eureka. That's a lovely idea for a name, I might say, if I might say. Like, yeah. You know, Eureka moment. That's what I think of. Is there do you know the origin story of the name?
I actually don't know historically why it's associated with this specific place.
Yeah.
It may have some of the more unfortunate kind of gold rush settler histories tied to it, but we can think a little like longer view history and think more in those terms. It's more positive.
I'd like to think of it as a place where great ideas were discovered. That's what I will think. And no, that's great. Right. How long have you been in Eureka, California?
About 2 years, kind of a slow move from the Bay up to here.
Yeah, so. I believe you spent some time in Philadelphia. Where are you from originally?
I'm from New Jersey, in the Philadelphia area. So Philadelphia was moving to the close big city when I moved there. So I'm not technically from, I didn't grow up in the city of Philadelphia, but that's my region,
Yeah, I got a little confused by this when I had, are you familiar with a fella named Bill Nace?
Oh, yeah.
Very
much.
Yeah, he label mate, and I got a little confused because he told me, and I'm going to get this wrong, I think he's from Jersey, but also spent a lot of time in Philadelphia. So is it fair to say, and I think he said more so than he even like New York initially when he was like a young concert-going kid. So the journey from some part of, and I think of New Jersey as a state. We're talking about the state of New Jersey, not some city somehow has the same name. Okay, so New Jersey and Philadelphia pretty close together is what I'm gathering. I've been to both places, but I can't remember. But they're pretty close. You're almost similar in feeling and the way people act, I guess.
Yes, it's between. There's rivers. There's just like river crossings between New York and Philadelphia, both, and it's what's in between.
Yeah.
And it's, I think, again, I don't know why I keep bringing up colonial history somehow, but because it is older, I think the regions are more compressed. Because things change pretty quickly in a small span. It's like, there's like the New York Metro and the Philly Metro are geographically rather close.
Yeah.
And of course they're very similar, but I guess they're slightly different.
Yeah.
I think linguists like the area for some reason because there's like a bizarrely giant amount of tiny regional accents that change in a small amount of geography.
Really?
Something like that. Just weird stuff. Weird disappearing history. I don't know.
Right. That's true. Those of us who observe America have come to know this. There can be a New York accent, a New Jersey accent, you're saying, and a Pennsylvania kind of accent. Although I gather a Philly tone or the sound of a voice from Philly might be different than another part of Pennsylvania as well. Just regional dialect almost. I'm using the wrong terms. I'm not a linguist, clearly.
I'm not either. And then there's the one that, that Philly Boy Roy uses. That one.
Yeah, right. Yeah, there's the Philly Boy Roy.
Freakishly accurate. But anyway, but Bill is correct. I mean, that makes sense.
Yeah.
Bill is actually, he grew up in the town very close to the town where I grew up. And, it's not hard. The distance between Philadelphia and New York is it's actually pretty close.
Yeah. Yeah. That's what I got from him. And like I say, I got a little geographically confused in that chat, but it makes sense to me now. What was it like growing up there in terms of being someone who was immersed in music and arts and culture? Did you feel enriched? Did you need to go to other places to get that stuff when you could come of age? What was it kind of like to grow up there?
I mean, it was fine. It wasn't anything to wring your hands over, but I think I got all of that more from myself, from hanging out with my sister, going, into Philadelphia at that point. My parents used to take us to see the orchestra in Philadelphia.
Oh, nice.
So that was a big deal. And if I wanted to participate in classical music, which I kind of fell out of pretty early, but I used to have to go up to Princeton, which is about almost an hour drive. My poor mom would drive me around to do that. But yeah, that was okay. And then I think radio was probably a big help, just radio at the lower end of the dial, kind of just learning to listen to radio, to augment, what was going on.
Stations like if I may guess, stations like WFMU, perhaps.
I wasn't in their airwaves.
I see. Sorry,
I got the Philadelphia WRTI from Temple. That was a big one, and WXPN. They had kind of some of this folk, more of the folk shows and what was called at that time, world music. That was. That kind of moment in music history.
Right.
that was a big part of their format. And then Princeton, WPRB, I think they boosted their signal at some point in my high school years, and that was a big got that signal, and that was a big help too.
Vocationally, I've been immersed in radio for most of this century, if I might say, since 2005 or 6. And to this day, I work in radio, and it's always been very huge for me. But I wonder how it. Sometimes wonder about its standing in this current time frame, where people are, anything they want is at their fingertips, anything on demand. They can curate their own listening habits, or they can fall prey to algorithmic music creation as well. I think I only asked this because you brought it up, but is radio still something that is important to you in your practice or as a fan of music?
It's probably, with the things you just mentioned, it just becomes even more of a part of a practice, and something I crave more and more and more. I mean, I interact with it more. The online radio has, like that's a huge help. So I guess that's kind of part of kind of a hybrid of both. But that I love that. I use it to even especially during, the last 3 years, I even used it as a way to kind of travel. I would listen to the newscasts where my mom and sister were, so I could, hear about the Conshohocken curve and just like whatever their weather was. And other radio stations would just make like the places that I like to be. I listen to Kaser a lot from LA. It makes you feel like you're, having a really good day driving around. Well, not a trafficy day driving around, but having like a nice time down there. I don't know. It's kind of something I started to do. And then, of course, WFMU is a treasure at this point. Yeah. So that made me feel more connected too. I started listening to it live more, like getting excited, like, oh, it's time to tune in, even though it's streaming and it's archived. It's still kind of exciting to tune in live. I listen to Ira's show a lot in that way.
That's it. That's an interesting point that you raised, that radio seems to have been custom made for internet life. You don't have to rely on, you were talking about the range you had. The WFMU was out of your radio range when you were younger, but now conceivably anyone around the world could listen to regional radio from wherever they are because of the internet. So it does seem adaptable. So you're talking about, it's important for you to kind of learn about what's going on in a specific region. The music curation, like the host, the importance of the host. It's interesting. So these podcasts that you're on right now and we make, to me, have always been an extension of radio, but there's fewer rules and parameters, and that's good. But I when people are like, I like radio, I don't like podcasts, I'm like, well, podcasts are kind of part of radio. Like, it's just an extension of it. It seems like radio is kind of leading the way, and it's going to be like the cockroach. It's just always going to, I feel like it's always going to be here in some capacity. But I do find that people struggle with myself included, like the music curation part can be hugely important if that's how you listen to music. If you are someone who relies on people curating your listening habits. But I'm also someone who used to go to record stores, and I don't go as much as I used to, and discover things myself. And vocationally, I get a lot of music sent my way. But for you, do you find you get a lot of music discovery and the fact that a host is engaging with you on it? Does that help you as a listener and as a musician yourself?
I feel like it does. I definitely get a few discoveries that way. And it gets you, it's a way to be a little bit out of your own head and respond to someone else's excitement. For whatever reason, I used to spend more time where there was just a community of people like constantly, just hanging out socially. Records were a big part of that, or just music listening. I'm not over fetishizing, has to be the record thing, but there's something about that process and like socially of being around and doing that. And that hasn't really been a huge part of my life for a while. So I feel like radio kind of keeps that more social connection to excitement about songs, and just that feeling that, you've missed something and someone's going to explain, like show you, like reveal this, I don't know, the feeling that you're going to really be surprised by something. And also just kind of attenuating to someone else's sort of code of their sort of deep code about the things that they like. I don't know. That's something that I find really helpful to stay engaged with.
Yeah. Well, it's really heartening to hear that perspective from you, because I also worry that an independent artist like yourself used to particularly benefit from campus and community radio, college radio. And I wondered if that has diminished now, because as an artist, I don't know if I guess what I'm asking is, like, do you feel like it's as important for you in your own art to get the word out, to get the promotion? Like, is that still a haven for you as an artist, to campus community radio, college radio?
It could be. I mean, I like the concert calendar. I think the concert calendar is still just like flyers up somewhere. I'm constantly surprised at how much I still find out about things from flyers and concert calendars. It's much more direct, and it like there's no riffraff. It's like it's very to the point. Yeah,
in Canada we have a thing where all the alt weekly newspapers seem to be they're either folding or gone completely. Is that the case in America? Like the concert calendar you're talking about, we used to pick up the alt weekly, and depending on whatever was going on, like, you'd read the articles. But you're absolutely correct. It was those promotional ads for, like, here's what's coming up, or the concert listings that the magazines themselves put together. They were a huge thing. But are there alt weeklies still prevalent in America?
Yeah, they're still around. I think it's thinner and thinner, and I'm sure they're folding as well. But I can't say that they're gone, but they're not thriving. But there's still some of them that are hanging in there. Just, it's depressing. Just, we all know where all the ad revenue goes that could be supporting this, but it's supporting, well,
they always, I as an artist myself, I always thought they benefited the independent artist the most, right? Like those it was sort of like vaguely free advertising. I mean, someone was paying for it, but it didn't, at least you stood a chance of being side by side with the REM arena ad. Like, they're playing an arena in your town, but also there's this whole thing of like all the smaller stuff. Anyway, that's where this was a tangent I didn't expect us to go on. Sorry. I know this isn't your field of expertise, but I figure experientially you must have some thoughts on this, being an independent artist and trying to make your way in this complicated landscape. That's all I was getting at.
Yeah. I do. I feel like it's, we're kind of up against some of the same forces and doing our best to, just to keep putting good things out there in the public sphere against, and not trying to be too, we can't change like what's happened, but I don't know. I just feel like it's tricky because, journalists and artists, like you kind of still stay in your separate lanes. You can't, because that's like kind of an old agreement. But I just feel like that journalists have been through a lot of the same pains that musicians have been through. So I just feel a lot of there's just a lot of understanding of and sympathy, for it.
Yeah, I would hope that the more self-aware journalists writing these pieces are talking about the fact that artists are in distress, vocationally, and all that entails, mentally, physically, the physical health and mental health, the toll that we're hearing more and more about from musicians who are speaking out about these things. I would hope self-aware journalists would be like, wait a minute, that's our bread and butter too. If these folks aren't making music, like that's, because I run into this sometimes where I'm like, this whole, I tend to focus on independent, if I can speak personally, like I tend to focus on independent culture. And every once in a while I'd be like, man, my Patreon is so modest for this show, and my reach is somewhat, like, I do fine. It's doing well. This is the 10th year of doing this on this show for me. So something about it is resonating, and it's fulfilling for me. But I do notice how many musicians and artists and writers, people in the publishing, like in the, in the literature realm, are like, this is not sustainable for me. And I feel like some of my colleagues are only starting to realize that is bad news for us. the people covering these artists, because I know it sounds simplistic and obvious, but I don't think that has really dawned on us. The chain reaction of folks like you, not you specifically, but folks saying, have you looked at the streaming royalties? Like, we used to put out a record and you'd get paid for that work, and you get paid for each time someone bought the record a little bit, and the label would get some money, and everyone would get some money, but we would get some money, and licensing placements, all these things, like all of it is diminishing. And all I'm getting at is I appreciate your empathy towards people like me. I just hope it's reciprocated, because I don't know if it is sometimes. I see a lot of coverage about these issues, but I don't know if... Anyway, yeah, it's like I said, I was talking about the alt weeklies folding. I don't think it's a coincidence that's just at the same time as people who make music and art were saying, yeah, I can't do this anymore. I don't want to get too bleak, but have you had these thoughts ever? Like, what am I doing? I can't do this. Like, this is not sustainable. Do you ever think about these things? Well,
yeah. I mean, I'm probably in a position where I've been thinking about that the entire time. I don't think I've been. I don't know what that means, but
yeah. No, I fair enough.
But that's but yes, it does feel a little. I don't know. I'm not going to. I'd never stop making music. You just have to maybe think about how you are allotting your energy, and how you're sustaining yourself and staying healthy. But stopping making music or stop not recording music, even that doesn't seem like an option ever.
No, but I think that, like, I do think that the people making the most money are relying on our compulsions to keep doing it. Because I've heard that too. It doesn't matter. Like, purists will say it doesn't matter. Musicians are always going to make music, whether there's venues, whether there's labels. Like, that's just the way music is. And if I put it on the way this podcast structure has worked, this episode will go out, Meg, and it'll be on Apple and Stitcher and all the companies, none of whom pay us producers for that work. We're just handing them content for their channels, the same way now that musicians are like, often you'll see these like link tree type things where like, buy my record, hear my record on all the streaming services here, but they're not giving you and us any money for it. And they are, I think, aware of the fact that we just want to make things and contribute to cultural growth and community. And that's where it gets a little nefarious. You know what I'm saying?
Well, they're not music people.
Yeah.
They're making a technology.
Yes, they're technological people.
They're not. They're not. Yeah, I mean, it is. It sounds very obvious, but it actually is it's a difference.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, in any case, you said before we get to talking specifically about Furling, which is a beautiful record. Thank you so much for making it. Against all odds, apparently, given my bleak entry point into it. No, it's a wonderful record. But you did say a couple of things there about your upbringing that I wanted to ask about. You suggested your parents took you to see orchestras, I believe is what you said, classical music. And then you made an allusion to the fact that you initially had a foray into classical music, but you got out of it. Can you talk a little bit about how old you were? What did you end up exploring for even a brief period at the time?
Well, I took piano lessons just in the typical, that a person does who's musical. Musical family.
Oh,
I took piano lessons.
Oh, because did your parents play as well?
Oh, my father, his main instrument was trombone. So, but he was, he liked music. We had a piano in the house. My sister played piano. My older sister, Laura. So I took piano lessons as well. And I really liked it. I wasn't a good student. I mean, that's the hiccup. I was, pretty musical enough, but I was not a good student, not the kind of student that you need to be to go into the classical avenue. That became apparent pretty early.
Is that simply that you didn't practice as much as you should have? Like, I go through this with my son all the time. They don't want to do the...
Yeah.
I had to make it we have a shared calendar. So every day at 4:30, they're supposed to go and practice for at least half an hour. And sometimes I go down there and they're just looking at their phone or their iPod, whatever it is. And is it the practicing part that you found difficult as a child?
Yeah, I wasn't that inspired to practice. I mean, I would go to every piano lesson feeling guilty.
Yes.
I mean, I loved the instrument. I loved playing music. It just, some kids are just, you have to keep them from stop. Like they want to practice 5 hours a day. It's just a different kind of alignment.
Yeah.
Reading music wasn't really my thing. I think I just liked to kind of mess around a little bit more. And I thought the pieces were beautiful and I loved playing them, but I didn't have that kind of mindset that like a serious classical musician has where it's just a different relationship with music that I don't have. And I was not able to cultivate it either. But it had a huge effect on what I do. I never really took that course, even though it was available to me, but I didn't take advantage of it.
So how long were you sort of engaged in that, the lessons? And
I think I stopped piano around 15 because I started playing some sports and I just wasn't practicing enough. I just felt like I was wasting everyone's time and money.
Yeah.
That I just, but I got pretty far. And I also played cello. I started playing cello late because that is one instrument that you don't need to start playing at a really young age. So I thought maybe that would work. I thought maybe piano is just not my instrument. If I played cello, I could kind of jump in at an older age. And I love the instrument. Beautiful. Same thing. I just like to kind of play around on it and kind of mess around. But I didn't have that kind of discipline and, classical mindset. So I joined a youth orchestra. That's the youth orchestra in Princeton. I did okay. I'm very good at memorizing, very bad at reading music. And I played for a season or two there, but same thing. It seemed like I wasn't dedicated enough to warrant all the driving and the lessons. And, that was, but, again, it was a great experience, but it didn't lead to playing classical cello.
So when you take up the cello, so you stopped piano at 15. I don't remember if you said when you started it. How long were you playing the piano there?
I started at 5.
Good Lord. So you're 10 years of piano.
10 years. Yeah.
That is a long time to stick with it before feeling like you're sick of it. That's pretty incredible in itself.
I wasn't sick of it. It's just, I didn't have time. I was starting to get kind of busy and I was going to maybe just try this cello thing out and sports.
Cello and sports, the classic combination. What sports were you into, by the way?
Oh gosh, it was so boring.
No, it's not. I don't think it is.
I played field hockey, and I played on the men's tennis team.
The men's tennis team?
Because we didn't have a women's team.
That's a travesty in itself. I don't like that. But
we were the very worst team in the league.
So quite sophisticated, though. Those are sophisticated sports, if I might say, and instruments to play. Yeah, I mean, taking up the cello, that's not a lark. You have to own like a cube van to get that thing around, I'm guessing, to get to practice and whatnot.
No, it's pretty easy. Pretty light.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Right.
It fits in the back seat.
But all I was getting at in terms of duration, that is a solid foundation. You weren't just in and out after a year or two. You've got all the building blocks of music in 10 years for sure, I'm guessing.
Yes.
And so it doesn't sound like it was lack of interest. It sounds like it was a bit of guilt. That you were
like 10 years of guilt.
Yeah.
And underachieving.
That's a lot. That's a lot to overcome. So then you get into sports in your teens. Did you abandon after the cello? Let's call it the cello fiasco. I'm just going to make it more sensational than it was. After the cello thing, a couple of seasons, I think you said, are you cold turkey on music in terms of playing and then just focusing on sports in high school, or what was your... No?
I was just surviving high school.
Yeah.
I wouldn't even call it focusing on sport. I don't know. You're just kind of bumbling through, trying to do stuff.
Was it? Do you think it was social?
But then guitar. I think.
Then guitar.
Oh,
Okay.
sorry. Go ahead. I'm
no.
speaking over you.
No, you're not. It's fine. I also was speaking over you. All I was going to ask was, do you think it was social? Like, on some level, because I navigated this world too. I was really into sports, but really into music. And then in high school, I decided I didn't really like the sports people as much as I liked the weirdo music and arts people. So I gravitated towards them at some point. Incidentally, I'm a much better basketball player in my 40s than I ever was in high school now. I play with my son. I'm like, why am I hitting these shots? It doesn't make any sense. I got range. Anyway, I think
I'd love to shoot some hoops right now. It's been a long time.
We should, the next time we're together, the first time we're ever together, we should play a round of one-on-one. I long had a fantasy of trying to do like a web video series where I just played one-on-one with musicians. I thought that would be a cool angle, or like 21, just something where you could do questions and you're not too winded. Do you have 21 in America? You do, right? It's the free throw shooting. Yeah.
I'm really bad at it. I used to try and learn. I had a friend, he was really trying to teach me. It was fun.
Yeah.
I remember even I got like really shit talked by some like little kids. I was like, what am I doing? It's terrible.
It's a weird.
Like, what am I doing here? It was cute. It was very charming, but yeah, I'm better at defense.
Okay, that's good to know. I already know how to take you on now if we ever get together. My point was though, in high school you start to get that the cliques start to form. I would say, like the jocks and the musicians in my upbringing in the 90s, definite distinctions there. Some crossover, but some distinctions there. Maybe I'm romanticizing the delineation a bit too much. It wasn't that smooth because I felt like I was in both realms. But do you think giving up music and getting into sports and getting your way through high school, was there any social pressure to try and...
Not really.
No?
I don't think I changed that much. The sports was just nice because it was just something that kind of worked. I wasn't that social for me.
Yeah, okay.
But it was fun. And I think the school that I went to it didn't really have that kind of classic, the music people and this. I was just kind of in my own little world, I think.
Right.
I had friends and plenty of nice experiences, but it wasn't until I went to college that I found music people, that kind of.
Okay. Yeah.
I didn't have that in my town where I grew up.
You didn't attend the Breakfast Club High School?
No, I didn't attend Breakfast Club High School. Exactly.
Okay, got it. That's fair enough. So guitar,
different demographic.
Different demographic. Yeah. So guitar, you say? What? When are you prompted to try the guitar in the midst of all of this chronology that we're describing?
My father had a classical guitar, so it was around, and that was just more DIY, teach yourself. And of course, that's the instrument that after all the lessons and this and that, it's the one that was just hanging on the wall that I could just kind of pick up and mess around with.
Oh, okay. Okay.
That I went for.
Was there any in all of this, like you mentioned going to the orchestra with your parents there, and I assume that had some bearing on you taking up piano and cello probably. Were there artists or experiences you had that made you want to explore the guitar, to take it off the wall, if you will?
I think it's probably just like my father's listening, the music that he played. There was a fair bit of bossa nova and classical guitar. It was a classical guitar that we had. Yeah. So, and he wasn't a super, he was self-taught as well. That wasn't his main instrument, but he was like a chord guy.
Right.
Just liked those chords, and he kind of taught me that. I didn't really learn. He just taught me some basics just to get started. But, I just taught myself a little bit. I never got too advanced in anything. Didn't read tab, didn't kind of go in that direction, but just stuck with playing by ear. But yeah, it was just having that classical guitar around. I probably started playing it later in high school. I don't think there was just this feeling that my if I started playing guitar too young, that my hands would be too small, or I'd hurt my hands or something like that. I don't know. I don't know what that was, but
isn't piano harder on your hands than guitar? Whenever I try to play my son's piano, I'm like, I can't. My fingers get all. I play guitar a little bit, and that doesn't bother me. But piano, I find difficult to get my hands.
Yeah, there's a lot of technique and strength in there, which I never. Yet another thing with the guilt, I never got there with the proper technique or the strengthening exercises. Didn't do any of that. I see.
Okay, so it doesn't sound like it was any particular artist that prompted you to take on the music that you're now known for. When did you start to ponder the notion of and actually, I guess, begin executing songwriting, composition, and potentially singing out in public even? Do you remember what prompted that?
That happened pretty naturally, just because my sister was also playing music, my older sister Laura. So I didn't really have to think about it. It was just what she was playing. I wanted to learn some Neil Young songs. They sounded like they were not too hard. And just the chords. Like I was like, I could hear that there wasn't going to be a... and then she was playing, in bands a little bit. And she was really early in like the Tascam 4-track universe.
Really DIY, some DIY stuff going on. Okay.
Yeah. So that she had the Tascam, and I was still in high school when the Tascam showed up. So that just, I don't know, it wasn't like this big decision or searching. It was just what was fun to do and what was there. Then we would play like weird open mics in the greater Princeton area.
Yeah.
So that's about it. But it wasn't... I can't say that there was. It just was natural.
Natural for you. So at some point, though, we've hit upon, like, I think by this point, those listening will appreciate that, Meg, you're a multi-instrumentalist, but we haven't even got through all the instruments you're sort of known for. Drums are also a key instrument for you, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Again, with very little technique. And I guess that's another theme. Yeah, drums. It was a bit random, but just came about kind of socially again. My friends, Richie and Max, were, that they kind of had this vision of having like really pounding, simplistic drums, minimal drums, and asked if I wanted to try it out. So I started playing with them with Watery Love. I had played around. I'd just been around bands so long that, I'd learned separation and such, but I never really studied. But that seemed kind of what they were hoping for, was, somebody that didn't have that sound of like, I've been practicing 5 hours a day, for the last
a little scrappy
15 years.
Yeah. But I mean, some of these instruments, I was making the joke about the cube van and the cello, which apparently was not a very good joke. It was a bad joke, and I apologize. It doesn't sound like it's as cumbersome as I thought. Drums, though, as a drummer myself and someone who obtained drums in my teen years and had to lie to my parents because they didn't like music, and when I brought them home, I told them they were someone else's. I just borrowed those from Ted, and they're like, okay. Anyway, drums are a commitment. A lot of stuff to move around there. So you can't just willy-nilly play the drums. You have to commit to it on some level. A lot of parts, big pieces. So you obtain a drum kit, bring it home, that kind of thing, or no, you're at practice spaces?
I just use other people's drums.
Other people's drums. So what, though, prompts you to be... Just that someone asked you? Or did you have that's it? You're like, I guess I'll try to play the drums, and you figured it out?
Yes.
That's pretty amazing.
That's all it was.
Okay. But was that a primary instrument for you for some period?
When Hair in Oblivion was really active, that was, doing the drums and voice. So yeah, I guess that became a primary instrument.
Okay.
For a while. I miss playing them, but yeah, I don't miss the gear problems, but yeah.
It's a bit of a pain, yeah. All my bandmates were relieved when I finally bought cases for the drums because they would help me carry the cold drums in the winter. And they'd like, this sucks, all the gear. And I'm like, oh, yeah, I should get a bag for all the stuff and then cases. And they're like, this is much better. Thanks for doing that. I'm like, yeah, sorry, I didn't know any better. They are a bit cumbersome. You mentioned a couple of the bands you played in. Are there any others you want to cite before we get to you becoming yourself and starting to do things on your own?
See other bands. I think I was playing in a couple bands out of my college times that sort of traveled over to Philadelphia. And then I also played in a band called Clock Strikes 13 for a little bit. There was a rotating cast of like extra musicians in that band. Then from that band, I met Brooke Seitensen, and then Esper started. So
right.
That's a little bit of a loose thread, but I think I always had like some kind of thing going in addition to starting playing music with my sister, like from way back. So,
okay. Which
has been a constant the whole time.
So you've been a collaborator in what we've described thus far. You've mostly been a collaborator. You've worked with others. When did lyric writing, poetry, if you will, when did that sort of expression start to enter your realm as a creative person?
Probably in college, like playing music with my sister, the kind of the Tascam, home recording era. I don't think it was, again, it's just, if I was singing, I needed to kind of fill that out with lyrics. So that was kind of how it happened.
Okay. It sounds like your sister was a real lodestar for you. Like she's the one who...
Yeah. Absolutely. Yeah.
Okay. So now we get to you, and I appreciate you indulging in this very reflective line of questioning, because it seems to me, from what I can gather from Furling, it's a pretty reflective record. Does that resonate with you? Does it feel that way for you? Yes.
And by reflective, you mean like just kind of personally reflecting on like milestone-y, or kind of, I'm not sure.
Yeah, I guess I mean sort of pondering parts of your life, potentially not necessarily something that's more, I don't know, maybe pondering your past a little bit more. Is that accurate?
I'd say that's definitely in there, but I don't know that I had that much of an autobiographical bent, to it when I was writing those pieces. But I'm sure that's part of any record. It always winds up sort of being literally a record of a period of time from that you wrote it and everything like that. It always kind of winds up being in there.
Yeah.
I usually see that after the fact more than when I'm actually writing it. It's not really an intention, but it gets stuck in there along with all these other things that you're doing and conjuring up when you're working on the songs.
Well, you invoked Neil Young a couple of times, and as a student and fan of Neil Young, I do hear some sonic allusions to certainly his sort of mid-70s period, at least. So I guess I wonder and I don't know if that resonates with you or if you were consciously making allusions to that stuff, but it's like a vibe. It's like a feeling. So yeah. I guess that's where I'm coming from. Like, do you suppose, as objectively as you can, do you suppose you were kind of drawing upon those early influences in conjuring the songs for this record?
I'm sure in some of them was probably very intentional, maybe even just more into the same place, like those places where he lived in Northern California that I also have a deep affection for.
Yeah.
And how he's such a massive artistic force in that area that it's just like his songs almost kind of soundtrack the space.
Yeah.
In that way. They're hard to separate. He just really had that ability, or maybe it's just something that happens after the fact. But whatever that is, it's definitely a real force. And I really respect the way he uses chord voicings. They're relatively simple. They're not, it's not like crazy jazz chords. It's not like you have somebody like Joni Mitchell just being a complete genius, and there's like 50,000 passing chords, and you're like 1 minute in the song, and that's like amazing. But his they're not like a little more simple sounding, but you can just hear that awareness of these voicings, and they almost become. I just don't know how he could make these simple, really chords that are just out there, and they become his like signature for him. Because he played them with so much, I don't know, there's just like, how do you make a chord like your signature, like a basic chord? It becomes just the way he voices things. So that's probably something that was kind of something in the back of my mind, was like chord voicing in that way that, again, it wasn't like this huge artistic statement, but it was something I was thinking about a lot. Maybe, going back to the 10 years of guilt of not really being a very studious person, but liking to play these instruments and kind of getting that out of them.
Yeah, well, I mean, you're describing something that I appreciate about Neil, and I think it's reflective in your music as well, is trying to present a feeling as opposed to a technically, superior expression, if you will. Like it seems to me that given how much training you undertook, whether you were fully engaged or not, you have the foundation, probably more than most, to be a Joni Mitchell, to play complicated things. And I'm not suggesting they're simple, but you do seem to have made a conscious effort to put forth a vibe, a feeling, with relative accessibility, as opposed to, it could be that someone who knows what they're doing could be like, yeah, I want to learn these Meg Baird songs. I love them so much. There are certain artists, Dylan, Joni Mitchell, whoever, where the chords are so complicated for me. Sorry, I tend to sing songs to my daughter, in particular these days at bedtime, and I take a guitar. And sometimes I'm like, I don't know how to play that. So I look it up. I'm like, I don't even know, what the hell are they doing? I can't figure this out. What is this? And then inevitably, and probably, it's like I end up with Dylan and Neil Young or Silver Jews, or just like relatively simple things that I can do as a novice. All I'm getting at is I too am like going for a feeling in trying to, and I like artists who are trying to present a feeling. So all this to say, does that resonate with you? Do you feel like you're trying to put forth a vibe and a feeling as much as you are, look at me, I know 50 friggin' chords or whatever?
I don't even know if it's that plan. It's just, that's my relationship with the instruments.
Yes.
And that's what I'm working from. And I could even change that. I could just say, like, you know what? I'm sick of this. I'm going to spend an hour a day with chord books, and it's all going to be different. Now my relationship with the instrument is different. But that's, I don't know, that's where I am with it.
Yeah.
So...
Fair enough, yeah. Now, I led us into trying to provide an overarching generalization about this batch of songs. And I wonder if you have a sense of that objectively now that the record's done. Like, I forget what I said. Do you have a sense of what you're trying to convey in an overarching sense with this record?
I do, but since it is a record, it's hard to put into words. I know that sounds like a cop-out, but that's kind of how I try and make them. They're really dense with meaning, that it's not an essay. If I were writing an essay, then that would be a totally different art form. So sometimes I can be a little protective about, I'm always happy to go in depth about what did this mean and what were you thinking, but I don't, maybe that's just fear or laziness or something to not want to kind of spell it out as an artistic statement, but I'm always a little hesitant to get too much, and because they're really dead. I really try and have them. They're very collagey dense, like the images I'm pulling from, the sources that are in them, even the people that are in them, that other music I'm trying to kind of honor or be inspired by. It's never, there's always like a lot going on.
That's
in that department. So
it's fair. I wonder, because it's funny you invoke it not being an essay, because I do tend to lean on lyric sheets a lot I don't know if I lean on them. I appreciate them generally. And I got yours a little bit late. It's in cursive. And
sorry.
No, it's fine. And I'm like, this is because the record has been floating in and out of my home for some weeks and months now. And it's one of these records where I'm like, I kind of get lost in the sound of it as opposed to the meaning. So I apologize if I am coming across a little lazy, but what I was getting to earlier is like, I mostly get a feeling here that I can't quite pinpoint myself. And I wonder if other listeners will have that same experience. Like, it's a real mood setting record. I guess the only other way to kind of clarify my question without putting you on the spot is time and space. Like, was this a batch of songs that you wrote mostly at the same time? Like, are they reflective of a particular time period for yourself?
Oh, yeah, very much. Just from when the last solo record was out to when I recorded it. So it picks up exactly where that one's done. And then this one, and the next record will do the same.
So what time period,
and those are really long periods of time usually,
that's what I was that's what I was kind of leading towards. So yeah. What years did you what
I guess that's 2015 to 2020, so
right.
5 year
right. Okay, so
span.
It wasn't necessarily we're collectively going through this thing, this pandemic, and I think there are some records that when I talk to people are like, yeah, I wrote this between 2020 and now, but it's not a pandemic record. Please don't pin that on me. But as a hunter, I'm like, well, wait a minute though. I see the isolation here. I see the alienation. I see the longing. Surely, what's going on zeitgeist-wise must be informing that song. And then invariably people are like, yeah, I see what you mean, but I wasn't thinking that. That's kind of what I'm coming from, because I know it's hard to kind of, yes, Meg, who or what might have inspired a song.
Yeah.
What I'm trying to look for is that kind of universal feeling. Like, is there something here where you feel like we were all going through something socially, politically, culturally that comes up here for you that you tried to articulate and like process and articulate in songs?
I think, yes, I think if I was looking at like these really broad, big picture things like that, I actually tracked the record right before the shutdown. I recorded it in January, March 2020.
I see.
So it was not in that time. It happened right. But it's that feeling that collectively we're kind of looking out at the horizon, wondering like something is gathering. I don't know. And just that there's going to be so much grief to go through. So this is for that. And I went through some personal grief. I lost my father.
Oh, I'm so sorry.
And I think, kind of bridging the gaps between like personal and collective grief. Yeah. But this was before the last 3 years. We got a lot going on and have had. So that's, I think, a big, in terms of just like zeitgeisty type of feelings, and also consolation for that. Like the last piece was meant to be a consolation for losing everything, even language and your ability to use your mind, think. So yeah, I think the feeling of consolation was a big part of it, and also kind of being in a very long view, long history kind of mindset was another piece of it too.
Yeah. I want to, again, send my condolences to you, or convey them to you, I suppose.
Thank you very much.
I'm sorry for your loss, and that's part of what prompted my initial question, like not knowing that context, of course, about your personal loss, but that it felt reflective of a life. And I think when you go through a loss like the one you've gone through, you can't help but ponder that relationship. Like, this is your whole life. Like, you wouldn't be here, right? So I feel like that's where I was coming from. And that's what I feel. That's the feeling. Again, I can't pinpoint lyrics at this point for you, but there's this just feeling of like stock taking and gratitude. And I think when I ask about the time and space and what we've all gone through, I pick up on that, but I didn't realize it was coming from such a deeply personal space. Because here it is 2023, and you tracked this in 3 years ago. So the other side of this coin, this kind of coin that I find with artists, I've found with artists over the last couple of years is, I'll say something like, well, I'm reading this thing and this is clearly about what we're going through. They're like, no, but to be honest, I see what you're saying and it freaks me out how prescient I inadvertently was. I'm singing about something that has nothing to do with what you're talking about, but I see how it resonates. Objectively, do you pick, like, you're clearly writing about grief and reflection and longing on a whole other level, but do you see how it might come across as somewhat prescient, eerily relevant to what we're going through together?
I can see that, and yeah. My friend Mary always tells me I'm freakishly psychic with those things. I don't really put that much stock in any of that kind of stuff, but I don't know. Sometimes my records wind up having some of those elements, but maybe everyone's work, if they're kind of in touch with that type of trying to be in touch with those kinds of forces, I think that usually winds up happening.
I have expressed a theory on this show with other artists that I think artists are maybe more tapped into such feelings. They seem prescient, but really they're just tapped into something that no one has articulated fully yet. So you come across as psychic, but maybe you're just dialed in a way that other people aren't. Does that make sense?
Yeah, kind of like when your cat wakes up before you in an earthquake or something.
Yeah, exactly. That's exactly the analogy that we need right now. A cat waking up ahead of an earthquake. Yeah. No, it's all this to say, it's a really lovely record, and I'm sorry for the circumstances that inspired some of it. On the other hand, do you feel, I know I was just talking about this with someone else, when you experience such a loss, you can grow to appreciate life more. It's unfair. It feels unfair and devastating, but you grow to appreciate either the person or thing you lost more, and then that can actually propel you as you go through life, like gratitude. Do you feel like that's in here as well?
I'm sure it's in there, and along with just cultivating, feeling more poetry, just like in your life, not just as it's just something you can cultivate.
Yeah. And
it's just can be personal. It doesn't have to be written down or shared or anything like that, but it's kind of state. And again, there's so many things in that record that would, a lot of it's really joyful too.
Yeah.
And so much of it was done with Charlie and about really positive things in our relationship and all of that too. There's just so much. And also just like my weird big thoughts about the world and history and all of that. That's in there too. I'm not an essayist or a historian or an academic that can address these things through those mediums. So I think I tackle them this way instead. And yeah, so that's a lot of what's going on in there as well.
Absolutely, and I appreciate you expressing this in such a way, because I do think spending time with the lyrics, as I need to do more of, I think gives the record another dimension. I've read them, but I like to read. Sometimes I like to read along with the singer, like a bouncing ball thing, and I just sometimes lyrics hit me in a different way. So I'd encourage people to do that as well. In terms of the sound, and you mentioned collaborators there, is there anything you want to say about what other people brought to these songs, the people you worked with on this record?
So, it was a small group. It was Charlie and me, and Charlie did some co-writing of this, and he did a ton. We basically just made our own band, the two of us. And there's very much like a lot of our world that we've cultivated is part of what's in that record. And then the other person would be Tim Green, who did the recording. And of course, he played a big part as well. But it was fun just having the three of us. It's a really streamlined process. But yeah, Charlie, he did some co-writing. We just, again, like we formed a band together, even in overdub, but we were kind of working in a band format for the record. And he was really good at, pushing me to go further in that direction than sometimes I do. And it's just me. I think I underestimate what I can do as a soloist.
Yeah.
And so, so that was, it's always good to be pushed out of your comfort zone.
Yeah, no.
And he was great at doing that.
That's lovely. Have you been able to play live much and potentially bring some of these songs to the stage yet?
Yes, I got to do a really great kind of trial run. Not really a trial run. I mean, they were great shows. But I teamed up with Chris Forsyth, and we shared a band of Ryan Jewell and Douglas McCombs and Charlie as well. So that's the first time I've played in bands many, many, many times, but that's the first time I've ever kind of gone in that traditional band format, and we're going to do it again in March on the West Coast. Mm-hmm.
Excellent. Yeah, Douglas McCombs was on this show, and Doug mentioned that he really enjoyed playing with you. It was a big thrill.
Oh, that's nice.
Yeah. So it's nice to hear that that might happen again. Yeah, that's great.
Probably as many times as we can make it work, but at least it's going to happen at least one more time. Was
that your first sort of pandemic era run of shows?
I have been playing, but they've kind of tended to be special shows, one or two shows, outdoor shows in California.
Yeah.
But that was the first, tour of club dates that I've done.
What was that like experientially for you as a seasoned performer to be doing it in this weird context?
It's different. I think we were lucky. We were out at a pretty good time. So that was, that was helpful. But it was, it's different in terms of
cases and stuff.
COVID. Yeah, cases were, there was a recent booster.
Oh, I see. Right.
Cases were low. There was just it wasn't winter yet, and we didn't have that kind of holiday time spike that seems to happen now, like clockwork, all of that. So yeah, we were a little bit lucky in that way that things felt a little bit like lower danger. One of the things, I don't know, it's hard not to worry about the people that feel shut out from seeing live music. That's really painful.
The accessibility aspect of this?
Yeah.
It's a real drag. I mean, some of that could be mitigated by the mask wearing that no one wants to do or enforce. Anyway, I swore my New Year's resolution was I wasn't going to be so heavy about the pandemic with my guests, but I don't. The only question I would ask you, because I've been proposing this to people as an idea, but do you see music performance potentially moving to kind of a late spring, summer, early fall time frame somehow? Because it does seem to me that you just described it, that kind of October, November, December to March roughly seems to be when things go up because of the various strains of illness that are intermingling and then creating these harder iterations of virus. Some of these viruses we've lived with our whole lives and been like, yeah, I got a thing, it's over now, but now they don't happen. Anyway, does that occur to you? Like, maybe I'll just ask to be booked in times where it's going to be better. At least we have a better chance. Has that occurred to you?
It has a bit. I mean, and you already think that way in terms of weather and attendance and all of that. I don't know that most people have that luxury. Yeah. And also you don't want the venues to suffer, because how are they, they can't function just as seasonal venues. I really do. I just don't think anyone totally knows and just everyone's, can just hope that everyone's kind of doing their best.
Yeah. Meg, we're not doctors. We're not going to solve this problem ourselves. I just wanted your opinion because you're out there. You're actually like a frontline.
It's different, but it's, you appreciate things more too. That's if I'm going to find something positive to say about it is before this happened, a lot of times people seemed really fried and kind of checked out and ungrateful and like, oh, here I am here again.
Yes, that's true. It's more special. Yeah.
It's a lot more special and people are a lot more engaged. And
that's good. I
guess we can just hope for the best that things will get easy enough that everyone can get really bored and over it and checked out again. I don't know. Hopefully not. But it's that was a big difference is I think the engagement and just like not being kind of fried and over it the way that kind of can happen.
Yeah. Well, I wish you the best of luck on the road for those dates in March. You alluded to the fact that you may have already started the process of potentially a new record. Can you talk a little bit about where you're at with songs and if there's anything else beyond the tour dates, which I can link to and whatnot? Are there any other future plans you want to tell us about at this point?
Well, I'll be hopefully playing as many shows as I can. And I think I'd really like to catch up on a lot of collaboration, like overdue collaborations. I'm hoping to fill my my work time with a lot of that, like working with Mary again, working with my sister again. All kinds of ideas percolating that I hope to get off of a wish list and into reality.
This is Mary Latimer. Is that who you're referring to?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Okay. Just making sure.
Yeah,
okay.
We're hoping to do another duo record.
Nice. Lovely. That's great. If people want to learn more about you specifically, beyond going to Drag City's website and Drag City stuff, is there anywhere you'd like to direct them on the internet?
I mean, I just have a very simple website just to help so you don't have to look around at a bunch of creepy websites for shows and all of that. So I'm keeping that updated if you like a cleaner signal to shows and all of that. A dear friend helped me set that up so I can avoid the like song kick, like assault of ads and all of that. So that's out there.
Is that megbaird.com?
Yes, it is.
And what about like the things that everyone is leaving, the social media stuff? Are you on any of those things?
Oh, I have them. Yes. Is it okay? When is it okay to leave them? I don't know. I've been waiting. I
don't know. I keep seeing it felt like we were all going to leave Twitter, and then now it doesn't seem that way anymore. I don't know what's going on. I can't tell you. I can't tell you the right answer to this.
I stay engaged because I know the promoters have so much work to do, so I don't want to make it difficult for them. But if it becomes if there's another way, let me know. But yes, I have. I'm on all of the Twitter.
I don't know if you saw. Are you
Instagram? Yeah. Meg Baird at Instagram. I have a Facebook page. It's kind of like a terrarium that I started in 2007. That's like half dead. It's still kind of alive. I don't know.
Yeah, you're not alone in these thoughts and feelings, Meg. I'll tell you that. As we're speaking, Corey Hansen, fellow Drag City artist, had an amazing tweet about how he doesn't like the internet. He doesn't like any of the stuff, Twitter, Instagram, Facebook. I only use this to promote my records. Thanks. That's what his tweet said. It's the funniest. I retweeted it because I thought it was very funny. I'll probably get in trouble for it somehow. But I thought it was very funny, and I feel like everyone's just sick of everything, but we're doing our best. So all this to say, I'm not saying you're saying that, but I appreciate your sentiments. It's very noble of you to take the burden off all the people invested in you coming to their clubs or putting out your records. That's frankly, it's very kind of you, Meg. Thank you.
It's kind of them to put my shows on.
Yes,
and all the work that they do. So at this point, I try and stay engaged for the sake of them, and
Yeah.
see my friends' pets and adorable toddlers and all that.
Yeah, there's that stuff too.
That keeps me hooked. Okay.
There's some nicer things too. Meg, if we can go out on a song from Furling right now for people to hear, can you choose one for us, and also talk a little bit about why it came to mind?
Let's see. I think I'll think of Ashes, Ashes.
The opening track.
Opening track. I don't know. I went there. I think it was just because you talked about the kind of the prescience and the zeitgeist kind of thing, like that looking out over the horizon thing.
Yeah.
And seeing the swirling crowds. That song was very much from that.
Is it not primarily, if memory serves, primarily an instrumental though?
Yes, but I'm still,
Yeah. No, I'm not second guessing your choice. I'm just saying it's interesting that you're like deriving meaning from what we were talking about and having an instrumental be the most applicable song. I think that's fascinating in itself.
Yeah, well, that's yeah.
Sorry, I didn't.
It's not an instrumental in my brain.
No.
I guess I don't know.
No, fair enough. I just mean it doesn't have. Yeah, that's all. I think it's lovely. It's haunting. It's like Anyway, I don't want to say much more about it. Why don't we just play it for people and let them decide what's going on?
All right.
Okay.
Thank you very much.
Here it is. This is Ashes, Ashes from the beautiful new record Furling by Meg Baird, which is available on Drag City Records. Meg, I hope you enjoyed our conversation. I did very much. It's a pleasure to get to interact with you. I'm a fan. So thank you for this time, and I wish you the best of luck in the future.
Oh, thank you so much. Really awesome to be able to talk to you.
Oh, very special thanks to Meg Baird for making time for me and for appearing on this, the 748th episode of Creative Control, which is part of the Entertainment One podcast network and is available just about wherever you get your podcasts. If you can't find an episode that you've heard about and you've been looking for it and you don't know where it is, or if you want to learn more about me, sign up for my monthly newsletter, please visit vishkhanna.com. You can also like Creative Control on Facebook or follow the show on Twitter at Vish Creative, or you can follow me directly both on Twitter and on Instagram at Vishkhanna. Also, please visit patreon.com/Creative Control to make a flexible monthly donation to help fund all of the work that goes into making this podcast. $6 American or more a month grants you access to exclusive content, including getting the new episodes early, and also access to my archive of interviews that I'm slowly but surely releasing into the Patreon. These are things that if you don't know me very well, I've been a print journalist and an audio broadcaster for a long time, and I have a lot of stuff that I have in my archives that predates this podcast, and sometimes I find it and I put it up on the Patreon as a little bonus, and people seem to like that. So yeah, that's, other than that, you're just supporting the show and all the work that goes into it. So thank you for considering even donating anything. And again, it doesn't have to be $6 a month. It could be any amount. You could do $2 a month, $3 a month, $10 a month, $20 a month, and you can change the amount at any time or cancel the donation at any time. It's very flexible. So please consider doing that at patreon.com/Creative Control. And if you have any interest in a Creative Control t-shirt at that $6 or more a month range, just send me a note on Patreon and I'll get you one just as soon as I possibly can. Thanks again to Pizza Trocadero, The Bookshelf, and Planet Bean Coffee in Guelph, Ontario, and Grandad's Donuts in Hamilton, Ontario for their respective in-kind support for this show. Thanks as always to my friend Jim Guthrie for letting me use some music of his on the program. You can learn more about Jim at jimguthrie.org. And finally, thank you so much for listening to this episode with Meg Baird. I hope you'll check out her new album, Furling, and all her work. She's a wonder. It was really nice to spend some time with her. And other than that, I hope you will subscribe to this podcast or follow it, and also tell your friends out there about it, and maybe they'll do the same things and help spread the word about this show. And other than that, I hope you're well, and I will talk to you very soon. Take care of yourselves. Bye for now.